Focus on yourself. Not others is not just a title, but a quiet call to awakening for anyone who has lived too long under the gaze of others. In very ordinary moments of life, when you say something and immediately wonder what others think when you make a decision, but your mind turns toward external reactions when you do things you do not truly want just to keep the peace. Gradually, you become used to living slightly away from yourself. Life turns into a series of silent adjustments. You compare yourself to others. You measure your worth through approval. And then a deeper fatigue than physical tiredness appears. It is not loud, but it lingers. Your joy no longer belongs to you, but depends on the attitudes, words, and emotions of others. Have you ever asked yourself, when was the last time you truly listened to yourself? Without explaining, without trying to be right, without needing to be accepted. The Buddha did not teach people to leave life behind. He pointed out that all peace begins with returning inward. When we seek stability outside, the mind will always remain unsettled. The Buddha taught that peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. This video invites you to pause and return to your rightful place. We will walk through each part of this meaningful journey together. Lesson 1. Returning to know yourself. When speaking about focusing on yourself, many people believe it means trying to control life or separating yourself from others. But in the spirit of Buddhism, the first thing to do is not to change circumstances, but to return to knowing yourself. You cannot truly live for yourself if you do not understand how your mind is operating. Most human suffering does not come from external events, but from living for too long without recognizing what is happening inside. We react very quickly, yet understand very slowly. We feel tired, sad, anxious, but do not know why. When we do not know ourselves, we easily live by habit, by reflex, by patterns formed long ago without realizing it. In daily life, the mind always runs ahead of the body. Before the body has even stood up, the mind has already gone very far. A thought arises, followed by an emotion, and then a story is woven rapidly. We believe that story is the truth, and actions are created from it. Buddhism calls this the continuous flow of mind consciousness, which without mindfulness will carry us away without our awareness. When the mind leads without being illuminated, people easily live unconsciously. We say things we do not truly want to say. We do things that do not reflect who we really are. Then we wonder why we do not feel at peace. Mindfulness in Buddhism is not positive thinking or an attempt to push away negative emotions. Mindfulness is the ability to clearly recognize what is happening in the body and mind in this very moment. When mindfulness is present, we begin to see the flow of thoughts, emotions, and reactions. We do not need to fix them immediately, and we do not need to judge them. We simply see. This seeing is deeply important because it brings us back to the position of the observer rather than the one being carried away. When you see that your mind is anxious, you are no longer completely that anxiety. A small space of freedom begins to appear. Observational meditation is one of the paths the Buddha pointed out for returning to knowing oneself. In meditation, we do not try to become calm, nor do we search for any special state. We simply sit and allow everything to appear as it is. A thought comes, and we know it has come. A feeling arises, and we know it is there. We do not push it away, and we do not hold on to it. This non-judgment allows the mind to gradually settle in a natural way. When there is no longer resistance or unconscious feeding of thoughts, the mind has the opportunity to rebalance itself. Before attaining enlightenment, the Buddha went through a long journey of observation and self-awareness. He lived in luxury and then entered extreme asceticism. Yet neither path brought liberation. Only when he sat beneath the Bodhi tree and turned inward to deeply observe his own mind did he clearly see the nature of suffering and the path to its end. Enlightenment did not come from outside, but from direct seeing of the mind. You can also begin very gently. There is no need for complex rituals. Simply take a few minutes each day to sit quietly. Feel the breath as it comes in and goes out. When the mind wanders gently, bring your attention back. Observe without blaming yourself. Gradually, you will become familiar with staying with yourself. The Buddha taught that the mind is everything what you think you become. When you begin to understand your own mind, you are laying the foundation for a life lived with steadiness, presence, and deeper peace. Lesson 2. Letting go of concern about others' views. After you begin returning to know yourself, you gradually notice another very familiar source of suffering shaping your life. It is living inside the minds of others. Much of our exhaustion does not come from circumstances, but from constantly directing attention outward. We allow the looks, words, and reactions of others to decide how we feel. When praised, we feel worthy. When criticized, we shrink and doubt ourselves. We compare our lives to others and quietly conclude that we are not enough. This comparison happens so continuously that we no longer notice it. In Buddhism, the desire for recognition is seen as a very subtle form of attachment. We are not attached to possessions, but to the image of ourselves in the eyes of others. We want to be seen as capable, good, right, and lovable. Yet the problem is that others' views are always changing. Praise today may disappear tomorrow. Criticism today will also pass. The Buddha taught that all phenomena are impermanent. No emotion or judgment lasts forever. When we place our self-worth in what is impermanent, the mind will always be unsettled. We live in a state of waiting. Waiting to be recognized. Waiting to be understood. Waiting to be seen as enough. When you look more closely, you will notice that much of your daily thinking revolves around others. What do they think of me? Did I do something wrong? Am I being judged? The mind keeps running outward, searching for answers. Yet the more you search, the farther you move away from yourself. It is like standing before a broken mirror and trying to assemble the pieces to see your true face. Each fragment reflects a different image. You look and become confused about who you are. The truth is, no fragment can give you a complete reflection. The practice in this lesson is not forcing yourself to stop caring about others. It is recognizing when the mind has left you. Each time you notice yourself comparing, simply acknowledge it gently. Each time you catch yourself waiting for praise, pause for a moment. No blaming, no fixing, just seeing. When seeing appears, you begin to draw attention back. Back to sensations in the body. Back to the breath. Back to this moment. The Buddha reminded us that without returning to the present, people live in illusion. Praise does not make you more whole. Criticism does not take away your inherent worth. When you stop living inside others' minds, you begin to stand firmly on your own ground. No need to prove. No need to compare. Just being present. From this presence, a quiet sense of lightness slowly emerges. You no longer need to look at yourself through a broken mirror. You begin to see yourself with a calm, honest, and gentle gaze. Lesson 3. Knowing what truly matters to you. There comes a moment on the journey of returning to yourself when you begin to realize that focus is not a matter of effort, but a matter of direction. When you are no longer pulled by the gaze of others, you stand before a quiet inner space, and within that space, a natural question arises. What am I living for? Many people try to force themselves to concentrate more, to be more disciplined, and to do more. Yet the more they push, the more exhausted they become. In the spirit of Buddhism, focus does not arise from strain. It appears when the mind becomes clear and is no longer pulled in too many directions at once. On the path of the Eightfold Way, the Buddha placed right intention in a very important position. Right intention is not about setting grand goals or thinking beautiful thoughts. It is about clearly understanding the motivation behind each action. When you do something, look closely at whether you are acting from love or from fear, from understanding or from a desire to fill an inner emptiness. If intention is unclear, even correct actions will still leave the mind unsettled. When intention is illuminated, action becomes much lighter and more natural. There are desires that when they arise, bring a sense of ease and openness. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. You simply feel that this is right for you. Even when the path is not easy, you are still willing to walk it. These desires come from the heart. In contrast, there are desires accompanied by tension and restlessness. You pursue them out of fear of being left behind, fear of not being good enough, fear of not being seen. When you achieve them, you still do not feel satisfied and soon need another goal. Buddhism points out that desires born from fear continue to create suffering even when they appear successful on the surface. The story of Siddhartha leaving the palace clearly reveals this difference. He did not leave because he despised a life of comfort, but because he realized that those things could not answer the deepest question in his heart. When confronted with aging sickness and death, Siddhartha understood that if he continued living in protection, he would forever turn away from the truth. His decision to leave was not an escape, but a step toward what mattered most. It was an intention guided by wisdom and courage rather than fear of loss. This lesson does not ask you to change your external life. What is needed is inner honesty. Each day, take a quiet moment and gently ask yourself, does what I am pursuing truly nourish me? If no one knew about it, would I still choose this? When these questions are asked in silence, the answers gradually reveal themselves. When what truly matters becomes clear, the mind grows less scattered. You no longer need to force focus because your energy is no longer divided. Focus at this point is the natural result of a life with direction. The Buddha taught that right seeing is the first step on the path of liberation. When you live in alignment with what you genuinely cherish, peace no longer needs to be sought because it naturally arises from within. Lesson 4. Caring for body and mind as a spiritual responsibility. When it comes to focusing on yourself, many people immediately feel uneasy. They fear that caring for themselves is selfish, that it means turning away from others and thinking only of their own needs. But in Buddhism, returning to care for body and mind is not an escape nor an indulgence of the ego. It is a very fundamental spiritual responsibility. If body and mind are not properly nourished, a person will not have enough clarity and compassion to live harmoniously with anyone. Focusing on yourself in the spirit of Buddhism is learning how to stand firmly so that you do not create additional suffering for yourself or for others. The Buddha pointed to the middle way as the foundation of an awakened life. The middle way does not lean toward indulgence nor toward self-mortification. Before enlightenment, he tried both paths. Indulgence in the palace brought no answers. Extreme asceticism only exhausted body and mind. Only when he let go of both extremes and returned to a balanced path did he see the truth. The middle way reminds us that peace does not come from doing more or doing less, but from harmony between body and mind. In modern life, many people fall into these two extremes without realizing it. Some chase pleasure consumption and constant stimulation to fill an inner emptiness. Others force themselves to be strong, to endure, and to sacrifice until they are completely depleted. Both lead to imbalance. Buddhism does not encourage careless living nor blind endurance. Proper care of body and mind is about listening to your limits and respecting the natural rhythm of life. Self-care begins with the body. The body is not a tool to be exploited endlessly, but the foundation of all experience. When the body is exhausted, the mind cannot be at ease. Adequate rest, balanced nourishment, and gentle movement are not luxuries but necessary forms of care. When the body is cared for appropriately, energy becomes more stable and the mind less reactive. The Buddha reminded us that keeping the body healthy is a duty because when the body weakens, the mind struggles to remain clear. Alongside the body is care for the mind. Caring for the mind does not mean always thinking positively or suppressing difficult emotions. It is the ability to recognize when the mind is overloaded, tense, or in need of rest. Allowing yourself to pause is not laziness but wisdom. When the mind is given space, it naturally becomes clearer. The breath is the bridge between body and mind. When you return to the breath, you return to balance. There is no need to change it, only to feel it. A steady breath helps the body relax and the mind soften. The Buddha taught that to keep the body in good health is a duty because without it, we cannot keep the mind strong and clear. When you care for body and mind as a mindful responsibility, you are walking the middle way where focus is no longer an effort, but the natural state of a balanced life. Lesson 5. Practicing compassion toward yourself. Once you begin caring for body and mind in a balanced way, you may notice a very subtle obstacle still present. It is the habit of self-blame. Many people believe that being strict with themselves will help them improve. But in reality, when you constantly criticize yourself, the mind remains tense and scattered. You cannot truly focus if every mistake becomes evidence against your own worth. The mind cannot rest and keeps swinging between regret and fear. Buddhism sees this clearly and emphasizes that the path of awakening must be nourished by compassion rather than inner violence. In the Buddha teachings, metta and karuna are two essential qualities of spiritual life. Metta is unconditional loving-kindness. Karuna is compassion towards suffering. What is often forgotten is that these qualities are not meant only for others, but must be directed back toward oneself. Many people find it easy to be understanding toward others, yet remain harsh with themselves. They allow others to be imperfect, but deny themselves the right to be vulnerable. This imbalance keeps the mind rigid and unable to settle. When you begin practicing compassion toward yourself, a softer inner space slowly opens. The way you speak to yourself each day has a powerful impact. When you face difficulty, what voice arises inside? Do you comfort yourself or scold yourself? Do you encourage yourself or deny your own experience? If a close friend failed, you would not use cruel words. So why use them against yourself? Buddhism teaches that words spoken outwardly or silently within both create karma. When you learn to speak to yourself with understanding and gentleness, the mind becomes less resistant and more capable of steady focus. Loving kindness meditation for yourself is a deeply important practice in the process of healing. There is no need to do anything complicated. Simply sit quietly and bring attention to what you are feeling. Then gently offer yourself words of goodwill. May I be safe. May I be at peace. May I be free from suffering. There is no need to force any special feeling. Just allow these phrases to repeat softly like warm water flowing through the mind. Gradually, tension begins to ease and a sense of acceptance appears. The story of the Buddha abandoning extreme asceticism is a profound lesson in self-compassion. In his early years of practice, he pushed his body to the point of collapse, believing that only pain could lead to liberation. But as the body weakened, the mind also became clouded. At that moment, he realized that harming himself was not wisdom. He accepted a bowl of milk rice to nourish the body, and from there entered the middle way. This decision was not weakness, but a deep understanding of the relationship between body and mind. When you stop punishing yourself and begin treating yourself with compassion, the mind gradually becomes more stable. You no longer waste energy fighting yourself. Focus no longer arises from tension, but from inner safety. The Buddha taught that no one is more deserving of your love than yourself. When you learn to hold yourself with understanding and gentleness, the path of awakening becomes lighter, and peace begins to spread naturally from within. Lesson 6. Doing what makes your heart come alive. When the mind has softened and tension has eased through compassion toward yourself, another question begins to be heard more clearly. What truly makes me come alive? Not merely existing or fulfilling responsibilities, but the feeling of vitality, meaning, and inner joy. Buddhism does not view joy as something to be eliminated. On the contrary, genuine joy is considered part of the path of awakening. A life without joy easily becomes rigid and exhausting. When the mind is not nourished by what allows it to light up, practice itself turns into a burden. Within the Eightfold Path, the Buddha spoke of right livelihood and right action as essential elements that bring harmony to life. Right livelihood is not only about ethical work, but about the way you sustain yourself without harming body or mind. Right action refers to whether what you do each day aligns with your deepest values. When your work and actions move against what you truly cherish, the mind slowly drains of energy. When they are aligned with what you believe in, a quiet yet enduring joy appears. Buddhism clearly distinguishes between genuine joy and pleasure. Pleasure arrives quickly and leaves just as fast. It stimulates the senses and demands constant repetition. After each moment of satisfaction, another emptiness follows. Genuine joy is different. It is not loud and does not need display. It brings a feeling of wholeness and ease. When you do something that makes your heart come alive, you do not need recognition. You feel fully present in each moment. This joy does not consume energy but nourishes it. Many people fear that doing what they love means avoiding responsibility or living in fantasy. But in the spirit of Buddhism, what matters is not the outer form but the inner motivation. If you do what you love to escape pain or obligation, that is avoidance. But if you do what you love because it helps you live truthfully and spread well-being, that is the path of awakening. When your heart is nourished, you gain more energy to meet life rather than less. Imagine that within each person there is a flame. This flame does not always burn brightly. When you live too long in tension and comparison, it gradually fades. Doing what brings your heart alive is like adding fuel to that flame. It may be meaningful work, a creative activity, a moment of stillness, or a contribution that matters. It does not need to be grand, only sincere. When the inner flame is nourished, you will find yourself more clearly present. Focus is no longer forced effort, but the natural outcome of a mind that is alive. The Buddha taught that the path to liberation is not separate from life, but found in the way we live each day. When you allow yourself to do what nourishes genuine joy, you are walking that path with gentleness and awareness. Lesson 7. Stop comparing. Each person has their own path. When the mind begins to feel alive and genuine joy is present, you may easily notice a quiet habit that still holds strong influence. That habit is comparison. Comparison slips into the smallest moments. You look at others and wonder why they move faster, why they receive more recognition, why their lives seem more complete. Each time this happens, a bit of peace is taken away. Buddhism sees comparison as a subtle form of suffering because it pulls us away from our own path. In the Buddha teachings, two important qualities help us move beyond comparison: non-attachment and equanimity. Non-attachment does not mean indifference or giving up. It is the ability to not place your self-worth on winning, losing, or outcomes. When you are not attached, you do not need to prove that you are better than anyone. You only need to live truthfully on the path you are walking. Equanimity is the ability to remain steady amid change. When praised, you do not become overly excited. When criticized, you do not collapse. Equanimity does not make you cold. It allows you to see things more clearly. The Buddha taught that when the mind does not lean toward liking or disliking, wisdom has space to arise. The Buddha once told a story about a lotus pond to show the emptiness of comparison. In the pond there were lotuses of different sizes, heights, and stages of blooming. Some bloomed early, some bloomed later. Yet none had to become another to be called a lotus. Each absorbed nourishment from the same water and bloomed according to its own rhythm. Comparing one lotus to another only creates unnecessary suffering. In daily life, when you notice yourself comparing, return to the present moment. Feel your feet touching the ground. Listen to the breath as it flows in and out. Notice the sensations in the body. This returning cuts through the stream of comparison and brings you back to the reality you are living. You do not need to be better than anyone to be fully present in this moment. The Buddha reminded us not to dwell in the past nor dream of the future. When the mind wanders between comparison and judgment, you are leaving the present. Only this moment is where life truly unfolds. When you stay with the present, comparison naturally softens and peace is given space to return. Stopping comparison does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means honoring each person's unique path. When you stop measuring yourself by other standards, you begin to live more lightly. The mind is no longer stretched between better and worse. You walk more slowly, yet with steadiness. The Buddha taught that each person must walk their own path. When you accept your own rhythm, you no longer need to chase anyone. Peace is no longer something to be achieved, but something allowed to be present. This freedom arrives quietly. It does not make you stand out, but it makes you grounded. When you no longer compare, you begin to see the value of each small step. You learn to respect your own journey and the journeys of others. From here, focus becomes natural because the mind is no longer torn apart by external images. Lesson 8. Living in alignment with your values. After moving through the steps of returning to know yourself, releasing comparison, nourishing body and mind, and doing what brings your heart alive, a deeper inner anchor begins to form within you. This anchor is the set of values you truly believe in and choose to live by. Focusing on yourself at a deeper level is not about fixating on temporary emotions or immediate needs, but about living in alignment with your core values. When values are clear, you no longer hesitate excessively with each choice. The mind becomes more consistent and peaceful because you know where you stand. In the Eightfold Path, the Buddha spoke of right view and right intention as foundational elements that guide the whole of life. Right view is seeing clearly the nature of life's suffering and the path that leads beyond suffering. When this view is distorted, people easily chase values that do not truly nourish them. Right intention is the direction of the heart that arises from this clear seeing. When you truly see what matters, your intention naturally moves toward it without force. Living in alignment with your values is when clear seeing and intention walk in the same direction. Many people live very diligently, yet still feel empty because they are living by borrowed values. These values may come from family, society, or admired external models. When you live by borrowed values, you constantly need validation. You do things correctly, yet feel no peace. You achieve goals, yet never feel fulfilled. Buddhism does not deny the role of society, but reminds us that when you lose your inner compass, you easily lose your way. Focusing on yourself requires the courage to listen to what is truly right for you, even when it is not celebrated by the majority. The story of the Buddha declining worldly power is a clear illustration of this lesson. After his enlightenment, he was invited to take on leadership and governance with great authority and prestige. The Buddha gently declined. He did not deny the value of power, but recognized that his path did not lie there. The value he chose was liberation and compassion for all beings. This decision did not come from resistance, but from inner clarity. When values are illuminated, choices become very simple. In everyday life, you face similar choices, though on a smaller scale. A word, a decision, an action, all reflect the values you are living by. When you pause and ask yourself, is this aligned with my path? You bring mindfulness into daily life. This question is not meant to judge, but to clarify. It helps you avoid being carried away by habit or external pressure. Living in alignment with your values does not mean always being right or never making mistakes. It means being willing to return when you notice you have wandered off course. Buddhism teaches that returning is more important than never falling. When you live according to what you truly believe, the mind carries a unique sense of steadiness. You do not need to explain yourself excessively. You do not need to compare. You know why you are walking this path. When values become the foundation, focus no longer needs to be trained. It becomes the natural state of a life with direction. The Buddha taught that each person must light their own torch and walk the path themselves. When you live in alignment with your values, that torch shines brightly enough to guide you, even when the world around you remains uncertain and changing. Focusing on yourself is not turning away from life or separating yourself from the world. It is a journey of returning to the root where all peace begins. When you stop seeking your worth in external gazes and learn to remain with yourself, life does not become smaller, but deeper. You are still present with others, yet you no longer lose yourself. The Buddha reminded us that peace comes from within. When you return inward, you no longer have to chase peace. This video does not ask you to change in haste. It simply invites you to slow down by one gentle breath, to look again at what is unfolding inside, to stay with your feelings, with your breath, and with your own path. If this video helps you pause even for a single moment, please press like as a sign of presence and subscribe to the channel so that we can continue walking slowly and deeply together.